Christmas Carol was written by Charles Dickens and first published in London in 1843. It recounts the story of Ebenezer Scrooge, an elderly miser who is visited by the ghost of his former business partner Jacob Marley and the spirits of Christmas past, present and yet to come. After their visit, Scrooge is transformed into a kinder, gentler man. Even as far back as 1844, the story was being retold by other publishers, and Dickens filed lawsuits against anyone who plagiarised his work. He went on to write 4 other Christmas stories in subsequent years, none of which would reach the success of A Christmas Carol. The central character of A Christmas Carol is Ebenezer Scrooge, a miserly London-based businessman. It's believed Scrooge was influenced by Dickens's conflicted feelings for his father, who he both loved and demonised. This psychological conflict may be responsible for the 2 radically different Scrooges in the tale, one a cold, stingy and greedy semi-reclusive, the other a benevolent, sociable man. In the opening part of the book, covering young Scrooge's lonely and unhappy childhood, his aspiration for money to avoid poverty is something of a self-parody of Dickens' fear about himself. As with the post-transformation during the final part of the book, a representation of how Dickens optimistically sees himself. To date, over 50 film adaptations have been made of A Christmas Carol.
I just saw the greatest cartoon of all time. It was about a miser who was visited by 3 ghosts at Christmas.
Dad, what you saw was A Christmas Carol. Yeah, TV writers have been milking that goat for years.
Reform, Ebenezer Urkel. You have alienated everyone who loved you.
Report, Mr. Solo. Captain, there appears to be some sort of spirit from an Earth holiday past. Fire photon torpedoes.
It's no use, Captain. He's showing visions of me future. God, I'm so fat.
But for this retrospective, I will focus on the best, or should I say most critically acclaimed adaptations. I'll start with the highest rated and my personal favourite, then drop down in order of best to worst until we just can't stand the film anymore. Scrooge was released in 1951 and starred Alistair Sim as the tight-fisted miser. Some of the crew found Alistair Sim difficult to work with during production. Whether he was staying in character to help his performance is up to debate. Alistair Sim was an actor who never signed autographs, refused to indulge in press interviews, loathed all gossip, turned down a knighthood, and objected so much to his voice being used in advertisements that he once sued Heinz. His performance served as the benchmark for all who would follow in the role of Ebenezer Scrooge. The film struck a chord with audiences across the world, and 70 years later it has lost none of its magic spell and haunting qualities.
Spirit, are these people real or are they shadows?
They're real. We're the shadows.
A Christmas Carol, released in 1984, was a British-American made-for-television adaptation starring George C. Scott as Ebenezer Scrooge. The attention to detail for set design is a far cry from the made-for-TV films we have nowadays. Scott gives a hypnotic performance as Scrooge, though it is odd Scott did not attempt an English accent for his character.
Because a little thing affects them, a slight disorder of the stomach.
Even though every other character speaks with an English accent.
Come to bring you home, dear brother.
Even his younger self.
You're quite a woman.
But still an outstanding performance. A Muppets Christmas Carol in 1993 was the joyous movie that saved the Muppets in their darkest hour. This surprisingly dedicated adaptation of Charles Dickens' defining redemption story has emerged as a modern classic. Michael Caine completely embodies Scrooge. He took inspiration for the film role from Wall Street cheats and embezzlers. He was quoted as saying, "I thought they represented a very good picture of meanness and greed."
One might say that December is the foreclosure season.
At the time of filming, he stated, "I'm going to play this movie like I'm working at the Royal Shakespeare Company. I'll never wink, I'll not do anything Muppety. I'm going to play Scrooge as if it's an utterly dramatic role and there are no puppets around me."
Excuse me, Mr. Scrooge, but it appears to be closing time.
Very well. I'll see you at 8 tomorrow morning.
The end result is a Christmas film so beloved, fans consider watching this film at Christmas as much of a ritual as decorating their Christmas tree or hanging up their Christmas lights.
Let us see another Christmas in this place.
They were all very much the same. Nothing ever changed.
You changed.
Scrooged, released in 1988, was a black comedy starring Bill Murray as Ebenezer Scrooge. A different twist on the Dickens classic, Scrooged is set in modern times, so we won't be seeing any beautiful shots of England in the 19th century. Murray plays a ruthless TV network president. After filming had been completed, Murray complained the production was so rushed he felt like he was doing a movie live. He also stated the shouting from all his characters wasn't his idea. Despite being made almost a century and a half apart from the original, the two renditions of the same story reveal that the archetype of Scrooge is just as relevant today as it was during the Victorian era. Next on the list, Star Trek fans' favourite, A Christmas Carol from 1999, starring Patrick Stewart as Scrooge.
What reason have you to be merry? What right have you to be merry?
In the mid-1990s, Sir Patrick Stewart embarked on a successful run on Broadway, performing a one-man stage version of A Christmas Carol. The rave reviews for these shows inspired Stewart to take the leading role in a feature film. Some nice set designs in this movie, but some of the graphics look like what you get in a cheaply made 90s video game. Though the previous actors in this list have all been better, Stewart still gives a worthy performance as Scrooge, and the film still holds up.
Why didn't you go home for Christmas?
I wasn't wanted.
In 2009, Robert Zemeckis' animated adaptation of A Christmas Carol was released. The film would star Jim Carrey in the role of Scrooge, who surprisingly did a good job. But it's hard to judge fairly because I'm not a fan of animated films. Some of the characters were so over-exaggerated it annoyed me throughout the film. Take the Ghost of Christmas Past's slow delivery.
Your lip is trembling. And what's that? On your cheek.
And also Scrooge's sister Fan's over-the-top English accent.
Yes, home! I was not afraid to ask him if you might come home, and she said yes!
And you want to come home? Shut up. Not a film I'd watch again, but the reviews are generally positive, so it might be just me. Next was the latest to be released, a TV miniseries of A Christmas Carol in 2019. The series starred Guy Pearce as Scrooge in a slightly different twist on the Dickens classic. Still based in the 1800s, but the characters talk and act like they were born in 1997.
If it were a Christmas present, I would have wrapped it in ribbons and bows to artificially increase your anticipation.
This series is awful. With a hammy Scrooge and a sarcastic Bob Cratchit, this version is painful.
That the human beast is not the human beast.
And I will create a race of super beings that will conquer the world. Sir, your car's been broken into. This is the first Christmas Carol version I've watched where I hate Bob Cratchit.
So I know the narrowness of my situation. And so do you.
The attitude of this kid. He should have been fired in this version. This concludes my list of A Christmas Carol adaptations. Comment below with your favourite adaptation of A Christmas Carol.
Hello, you there, boy. What day is today?
Today? Why, it's Christmas Day, of course.
Christmas Day.